Lord, open our lips, and our mouths shall proclaim. For some of you grade 12s, I think we might try and sneak you in at some point at the end, but it's really nice to have Strathcona in chapel this morning, and welcome to everyone who's watching on the live stream. So Chelsea and I talked a bit about this chapel this morning and decided on the theme of self-care, which is really such an important thing these days. So I'm going to kick this off with a few reflections. And I wanted to talk about the one really important underlying reality to self-care. And it's a requirement really that makes everything else about self-care possible, and that is, of course, the idea of self-acceptance or self-love, like this sense of valuing ourselves. And it's not always an easy thing to do, is it? It's really easy to think, I'm not good enough, or I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not doing enough. And that kind of can be especially true for us at Shawnigan, where we're always striving to reach beyond our limits and to shine and to stand out. So there's a book that I read almost 10 years ago now. Some of you may know that it's called The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. And in this book, he suggests 4 things that we can agree to, we can commit to, that can have an impact on our lives. And I would say that this little book actually did that for me when I read it. So the 4 agreements are these. Be impeccable with your word is the first one. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. And those are all worth talking about. But I'm going to talk about the 4th agreement this morning, which is really, I think, a key to self-care. And the 4th agreement is always do your best. So this sounds simplistic, but it really isn't. It's a very complex thing to think about what it means to always do your best. And I think it's particularly meaningful these days during COVID. So this is what Ruiz says. He says, under any circumstances, always do your best. No more and no less. But keep in mind that your best is never going to be the same from one moment to the next. Everything is alive and changing all the time. So your best will sometimes be high quality, and other times it will not be as good. Your best will be different when you are healthy as opposed to when you're sick. It will depend on whether you are feeling wonderful and happy or angry and upset. So I think what Ruiz is saying here is that, we're always being affected by forces and energies outside of us and inside of us. And I think what Ruiz is suggesting to us is that rather than only being led by the expectations outside of us, we also need to listen to ourselves and be led perhaps by the energies that are within us, these kind of different changing feelings and changing emotional states, changing kind of energy levels. So sometimes we have lots of energy to do lots of things, and sometimes we need to stop and rest, attend to our emotional needs, or just sit and be with friends. As somebody was telling me this morning, sometimes we just need to sit with another person and have a conversation. So here's another quote from Ruiz. In your everyday moods, your best can change from one moment to another, from 1 hour to the next, from one day to another. Your best will also change over time, but keep doing your best, no more and no less than your best. If you try too hard to do more than your best, you will spend more energy than is needed, and in the end, your best will not be enough anyways. When you overdo, you deplete your body and go against yourself, and it will take you longer to accomplish your goal. So I would add to this that learning to listen, as I say, listening to ourselves, to our feelings, is perhaps the most important element of self-care. It's the only way to avoid burning out or becoming overwhelmed. And here is the thing. No one knows what our best is, except who? Ourselves, exactly. So one more quote from Ruiz. If you just do your best, there's no way you can judge yourself. And if you don't judge yourself, there's no way you're going to suffer from guilt, shame, blame, and self-punishment. If you have done your best, and your inner judge tries to judge you, you have an answer. I did my best. There are no regrets. That is why we always do our best. It is not an easy agreement to keep, but this agreement is really going to set you free. So, we begin, I think, by stopping our self-judgments. And we know that once we stop judging ourselves, it's of course easier to deal with the judgments of others. And the truth is that when we do our best and stop judging ourselves, we discover actually something wonderful and liberating, that a lot of the judgments that we were feeling from other people was actually in our imagination. And if other people do judge us, it doesn't really matter that much, because we realize that it's more about them than it is about us. So this time of COVID, I've said time and again, it really is not a time to push ourselves to new heights or to stand out from the crowd. There will be lots of time for that in the future. On the other hand, the pandemic should not be an excuse to do less than we're capable of. I really believe that this time of COVID is a time to excel in finding better ways to love and support one another and ourselves, to keep doing our best, no more and no less, to learn what it means to care for ourselves so that we can be the best people that we can be. So that's my little reflection. I'm going to turn things over to Chelsea now to kind of lead us through the rest of the chapel service. Chelsea.
Good morning, Strathcona, and to those of you who are watching in the live stream, my name is Chelsea Wong, and I'm delighted to be speaking to you all today. I will keep this short and sweet because I have two amazing speakers who are going after me today, and I can't wait for you guys to hear their stories. So when Rev and I were talking about themes that we can use for today's chapel, many words came flashing across my mind that seemed fitting for today's occasion. Words like hope and gratitude are all values that I hold close to my heart. However, I didn't want to lean on overused words. So therefore, after some brainstorming, I decided on something that resonates with Strathcona a lot, the theme of self-love. We talk about giving and receiving love from other people a lot, whether if it is romantic or platonic. We tend to neglect the most important love, the love we give ourselves. My story here in Strath has been a journey of self-growth and immense healing. When I first got the position as head of house, I promised myself that I was going to give my all. This meant devoting and committing myself to every single aspect of the house. And don't get me wrong, these are great goals to have as a leader. But there was one problem. While I was pouring my heart and soul into the house, I allowed my responsibilities to overwhelm me. And as a result, I became so emotionally drained after the first term. To even add to that, with all the unexpected changes in Strath at the start of term 2, I was worried that this term would be even more straining than the first. Thankfully, with the help of our fearless leaders, Ms. Conroy, Ms. Francois, and Ms. Robb, we persevered through these tough transitions. During this process of the adaptation, I learned that in order to take care of yourselves, you have to take care of in order to take care of others, you have to take care of yourselves. I learned that the most interesting part of your life would never be the big, shiny moments. It will always be the way you figure out how to live through the bumpy bits, how to carve out long stretches of joy and love, how to make peace with all the world's contradictions, how to find a place of your own and throw a stake down and claim mine. Self-love is an ongoing process, and I am still on my journey. But right now, even acknowledging the power of self-appreciation and prioritizing my own well-being has helped me to become the happiest I've ever been. Someone I treasure dearly said to me a few weeks ago, "I hope one day you value yourself the way I value you." I didn't really realize the significance of his words until I started writing the speech. I think it is easy for us to slip under the current and lose ourselves in other people's lives because that's part of valuing friendships and people we love. We can forget that we are those people too. We are those friends for others. Self-love has become a buzzword now, commercialized and adopted to justify any purchase or activity. Yet self-love, the real ones, are the kind that actually transforms us, is radical in a culture that demands relentless work and hustle. Self-love is power, claimed back to yourself. It is doing what you must to feel good, even if what you must do is difficult and uncomfortable. It is standing up for yourself when people try to bring you down. It is taking care of your future self more than cashing in on instant gratification. It is proving to yourself that you are worth your own care. It is setting boundaries between yourself and others. Today, the Strath girls are wearing cherry blossoms in our blazers to symbolize renewal and new beginnings with the arrival of spring for our community. And last but not least, Strathcona, thank you for being the fire in my bones and for loving me for who I am for the past 4 years. It has been my greatest honor to serve you as head of house. And remember, self-love is power in action. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce Bea up to come read her poem.
This is not a poem I've written, but a poem I found that never fails to remind me of my own capacity for self-love. I have always been a loving soul with so much to give. I cherish every beautiful, strong, and smart woman around me in Strathcona, with a fierceness inconceivable to many, though this love is finally, after so long, stretching to include myself. Though it can be easy to lose sight of your own value, I hope this message reminds each and every one of you that you are important, you are special, and that every part of you deserves to be loved. This message, most of all, is for my beautiful sister. You're my whole heart, and you deserve the whole world. Accept yourself as a work in progress. Then continue to build yourself into the person you are dreaming to be, the person you have all of the potential to be. Accept your flaws, accept your truths, accept your past, and make light of them. No one can tear you down if you make peace with who you are and where you've been. If you are going to focus on the negative at all, focus on turning them into positives. Focus on growing. Sometimes, oftentimes, our minds are the scariest places of all. It'll trick you into comparing yourself to others, and it'll trick you into believing that you aren't good enough. But you are. You have always been, and you always will be. You're much more powerful when you believe in yourself. If you don't love you, who will? Give yourself time to blossom. Thank you.
And now I would like to ask Stephanie to come up and lead the prayers.
We take a moment to think about those in need in our families and in the world. Please respond to the bidding, Lord, in your mercy, with Hear Our Prayer. We continue to pray for all those affected by the coronavirus throughout the world, and for those treating COVID patients. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. We pray for our friends, for those who enrich us and deepen us, and call us to be our best selves. Lord, in your mercy. We pray for the class of 2021 as they enter into their final months as Shawnigan students and prepare for the next phase of their journeys. Lord, in your mercy. We pray for the poor and the homeless, for addicts and those suffering from illness. Lord, in your mercy. We pray that we might learn how to better take care of ourselves and our own well-being, and in positive ways to meet our own needs. Lord, in your mercy. And now we'll take a brief moment to consider any other needs that we have in our hearts. Lord, in your mercy.
So what is House Chapel without a 5-year grad speech, right? So now I'm going to invite Beth Charteau to come up for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Beth Charteau, and I am a grade 12 student in Strathcona. Almost incidentally, I am the only 5-year grad in our house. I have had the privilege of living in Strathcona for the past 5 years. As any Shawnigan student will tell you, my time here has truly shaped me into the person that I am today. It seems completely surreal that in less than 2 months, I will be stepping outside of Strathcona and the gates of Shawnigan for the last time. Through all of my years at Shawnigan, I've experienced monumentous highs and some pretty bad lows. I have grown in ways I would never think to be possible. At the core of my Shawnigan experience has been Strathcona. No matter what happened and what adversity I had to face, Strathcona would always be there to catch me when I fell, clear up my tears, and put me back on my feet and cheer me on. The girls of Strathcona are truly a family, and I can't imagine who I would be today without them. Living in a house of 60 girls can be pretty crazy at times. As much as I love my Strath girls, I really don't love our obsession with fire. I'm looking at you, Kate Fire Captain Sanderson. All jokes aside, I love the girls in Strath more than anything in this world. They inspire me to be a better person every single day. I am so proud of every woman here in this room today, and even our honorary woman, Dominic Pelosi. I'm also aware that living with so many girls that are really similar in age, it can make it hard to love yourself. Being surrounded with people that are truly beautiful from the inside and out can make it difficult to love yourself because you are constantly comparing yourself to them. Even as a grade 12 now, I still sometimes struggle with this. I wish I could be as selfless and as caring as my best friend Stephanie. I wish I could have the humor like Amanda. I wish I was as intelligent as Leah. I wish I could be as flexible as Strathcona's personal gymnastics star, Sarah. And I wish I could be as kind and as loving as the amazing Ava Klassen. I wish I could be a leader like Chelsea. And I wish that when I grow up, I can be only half the woman that our house director, Miss Conroy, is. Having all these amazing people in my life have inspired me to do better. Self-love isn't about thinking that you're perfect. It's about recognizing your flaws and cherishing them because they are what make you unique. RuPaul, a person that runs my favorite TV show, RuPaul's Drag Race, says, "If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else?" I can say with complete certainty that although I really do cherish him, he was wrong. When I first joined Strathcona, I had zero self-confidence, no idea who I was as a person, and I never really seemed to put myself first. I really did let everyone walk over me because I never had the confidence to stand up for myself. Living in a house of 60 girls, you don't really have to look far to find a role model. In fact, I have 60 of them sitting here in front of me today. Every single day that I spend living in Strathcona, I finally began to build love for myself. With the overwhelming love and support from the other girls, I began to love and respect myself as well. I began to treat myself with the same love, respect, patience, and compassion that the Strathcona girls show me every single day. If there is only one message I want you to take away from this speech, it would be this. Self-love means having a high regard for your own well-being and happiness. Self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. Self-love means not settling for less than you deserve. Self-love is everything that Strathcona is made of. Thank you.
Now I'm going to introduce one of my best friends, McKinley Bourne, to talk about her personal journey of self-growth and self-love. Big confidence booster there. At one point or another, I believe every person will go through something in their life that flips this switch, a switch that completely changes your perspective on everything. Something that maybe in the moment leaves you thinking, nothing good can possibly come out of this. The worst has arrived. But as time goes on, looking back at it all, you realize that this situation has shaped you. It's flipped your switch, completely shifting your values and the way you view life. Hi, everyone. My name is McKinley Bourne, and I'm a grade 11 in Strath. Today, I'm going to tell you my story. This isn't something I typically have spoken about before, so please bear with me. Now, before I just go ahead and pour my heart out to the whole school, I should probably tell a bit about myself. I grew up in Vancouver, living a very happy life with my mom, my dad, and my brother. A few values the Bourne family hold on a pedestal are integrity, perseverance, and, well, rugby. For as long as I can remember, the culture of rugby has always been around me, whether that means playing the game itself or even the little things like my dad sneaking me into a pub when I was 6 so we could watch the game together. To summarize, it's been a big part of my life. Okay, now moving on to the deep stuff. When I was 18 months old, my mom noticed several unusual red spots covering my face. As a few days went by, the whites of my eyes turned bloodshot red, and the skin around my face began to peel. Being a worried mother, she took me to see a doctor to make sure everything was fine. The doctor cleared me to go home that night with the conclusion that I seemed to be having an allergic reaction to something. He said I'd be fine, but Dana Bourne had a strong mother bear instinct in her gut that told her her little girl wasn't okay. The next day, symptoms got worse and worse. I was sent to emergency immediately. There we found out I had Kawasaki disease. For those who've never heard of it before, it's basically when the blood vessels throughout your body become inflamed, and it slowly makes it harder and harder to breathe. Long story short, it's a good thing they found out what I had when they did, because if they hadn't within 7 days, I would have either died or had permanent damage. They told my family that I needed an immediate blood transfusion. I got the transfusion, and, well, don't mean to spoil the story or anything, but I thankfully didn't die. Okay, guys, now let's flash forward 6 years into the future. Growing up, I was your happy, average kid that was fueled by laughter. But as I continued to grow, my family noticed bumps forming on my bones. As time went on, my legs became more and more crooked. From the age of 5 to 12, I was sent to many doctors, but none took my case seriously. They all said I was having growth issues, and as I'd mature, they assumed I'd grow out of it. As a young child, I don't feel like you seem to consider the opinions and negative comments from others. I mean, yeah, they're there, but at least speaking for me, I never would have let it affect the way I saw myself. A lot of my peers would comment on my body and point out the little things that, frankly, I just didn't see at the time. I'd look in the mirror and look at my crooked legs and just see me. That's all, no negativity. As time went on, that sadly changed. The comments slowly began to get to me more, and the thing that really broke me was when I was 12 years old after rugby practice. One of my team members' parents came up to me and said, "Do you know how deformed you look compared to the other kids?" They continued to call me weird, different, and asked me question after question about how on earth I managed to run and play sports. When I was young, I became very used to having boys come up to me commenting on my body and saying my legs looked weird, but never would I ever thought that a grown adult, someone who's experienced the highs and the lows of life, could go up to a little girl and take away that spark in her eye, to take away that joy and sense of innocence a child has. After that practice, I came home and told my mom, okay, it's time to get this dealt with, something's wrong with me. So we went to a specialist to get some x-rays done, and later that day, when the results came back, the doctors brought us both into his office. I remember probably 2 other doctors were in the room, so you can imagine this tiny office, yet it was very packed, but yet it was completely silent. That's the moment when I realized maybe I wasn't really okay. At the age of 12, I was diagnosed with a rare bone disease called hereditary osteochondroma. I know it's a big word, but I'll try to explain. In its simplest form, it's when non-cancerous tumors grow in your body. If one of them happens to land on a growth plate, it affects and morphs your growth. Just to clarify, it's not cancer. For my first surgery, they took out the tumors in both my knees and put in plates. Doing this basically tells your bones to grow inwards, making it less crooked. After that, they found out that a tumor had shrunk 2 centimeters of my wrist. They took bone from my hip and put it into my arm to lengthen it. The next step was putting in a rod to fuse the bone and the plate together. Since then, I've had 6 surgeries throughout the years, some big, some a lot smaller. They did testing. I had no idea why or how I got this disease, but they came to the conclusion that when I got the immediate blood transfusion from Kawasaki, that blood gave me this. I remember sitting in the doctor's office. It felt like the world was moving in slow motion. Turning to see a tear roll down my mom's face as I heard the doctors throw words around like cancer, tumors, surgery, it broke my heart. In that moment, I felt like I let her down, like I was this inconvenience that kept having more and more health issues. Being a sick kid, it's really hard to accept the fact that you're putting your family and loved ones in this constant position of fear. You have no reassurance that everything's going to be okay. No one does. I mean, I'm at peace with it now, but at the time I didn't see it that way. I felt guilty for making the people I cared about scared for me. I really can't begin to express how much a different person I was then, more so how much a different person I'd be now if I'd never gone through what I did. I was a very self-conscious person who had been convinced someone's identity was based off how they looked. In the community I was living in, appearance and social standing was extremely valued. But because I got this experience at such a young age, I was blessed with a change of perspective. For example, looking back at my mindset, I was being told straight to my face that I was going to have to go through many major surgeries, and well, at the time, they weren't even sure whether they were cancerous or not. For some reason, the only thing I heard was scars on my body. The main worry going through my head wasn't, I might not survive, it was great. More things that make me different. It's sad to admit, but I was more concerned about whether a boy would want to love me knowing I was different than the idea that I might not necessarily survive. And it genuinely hurts me to think that at one point in life I had that mindset. I live day to day with that mindset. Something that I really want to address is I know that so many young men and women, frankly all ages, are extremely trapped by society's view of perfection. We get told, we get brainwashed actually, that's a better word choice, that we have to look this certain way to be worth something. To know that so many people walk around daily hating themselves because society told them they aren't skinny enough or they're not strong enough, it frankly disgusts me. I know it's really hard not to be influenced by all these different things being thrown at us, especially as young adults. This is coming from someone who hasn't always known how much time I'd have, but life is so much more beautiful when you start living it for yourself. There's so much more to life than materialism. Something that really made me realize that was living in the hospital for a few weeks, having roommates that never stayed. Every few days you'd come and get a new one and wonder to yourself, what happened to them? Why didn't they come back from their surgery? For me, that was the exact moment when my switch flipped. Suddenly it wasn't, oh, who got invited to this party? It was, wow, things could be so much worse. And that's why I'm actually thankful that those parents came up to me after that rugby practice, because if they didn't, well, one, I would have never gotten the help I needed, but two, I would have never been able to grow into the person I am. For those that know me well, working out and training is something that I'm really passionate about. It may shock you all to hear this, but before I started getting surgeries, the most exercise I want to get in a day was the distance from my bed to the kitchen. The cat's finally out of the bag, I know. But being told that I'd never be able to play rugby again, my passion, because I'd be too far behind and not strong enough, well, frankly, that just fueled the fire. It was pure motivation to prove those doctors wrong. And let me tell you, when I did, it felt nice. This is just an amazing example of how everything happens for a reason. Whether you can see it yet or not, good things are able to come out of everything. It's all just perspective. So, why am I standing up here today making this speech to you all? Wednesday, April 28th is Jeans Day. It's a day that not only raises money, but more importantly raises awareness about how just important Children's Hospital is to so many people across BC. They saved my life. It's as simple as that. I'm so blessed to be able to say that there are no more surgeries seen in my future, and I'm as healthy as ever. And I can confidently say that to you today because of the support, security, trust BC Children's Hospital gave me, and I'll be forever grateful for that. So, when you leave your houses Wednesday morning, all decked out in your denim, I really want you guys to put yourself in the shoes of one of those kids. We all have experienced the lows of living in a global pandemic, and just imagine being a sick child who isn't even able to have visitors or see their family, going through the same day-to-day worries surrounding COVID as we are. It's more needed now than ever to raise awareness, to thank those nurses and doctors, support those families, to help those kids. If there could be one message I'm really trying to express, it's that everything's just a perspective. And once you get a hold of your own, that's when you really start living. Call me cheesy, I know it sounds cliche, but maybe it's cliche because it's true. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, McKinley, for that. So much wisdom this morning, so much heart, so much love. So a lot to think about, and I hope that all of you will, as the week goes on, just reflect on some of the things you heard this morning. I'm sure there'll be lots of echoes of things, and that you'll all really focus in the next few weeks on self-care and what that all means. Before we have our musical presentation, I'm going to invite the headmaster to come up and say a few words.
Thanks, Rev. It's really a message for the whole school. It's been one of those really quite magical weeks at Shawnigan. It's been irresistible. It's been irrepressible. People often ask me, what's it like being head of Shawnigan? And I often say I'm in a sort of state of permanent overstimulation. And just looking on what's happened in the last week, it has been a deeply stimulating week. And just some of the highlights for me was, Beth, wherever you are, good to hear you referencing the 5-year dinner, but just gathering in my garden. And MCB gave this incredibly moving and heartfelt speech. And in fact, I think he made a joke at your expense at one point, Beth, as well, which you'll have to repeat back in house, but I won't do publicly. On Wednesday, I was out and about visiting classes and found the grade 8s deeply curious in the salmon hatchery. And I just think, how cool is that Shawnigan has a salmon hatchery? And they were putting their hands in and feeling the coho fry just rubbing against their hands. And there were sort of squeals of delight in there. And it just reminded me how curious our students are, the expertise of our staff. And then on Thursday, you really knocked it out of the park. What we did on Earth Day, we've done things in the past before, but during the pandemic, we saw this as an opportunity not just to clear up our own campus, but to give back to the local community. And I was just so struck. I saw the Strath girls out the back of the sort of wilderness area of the school doing their bit, but every single house just took it with such energy wherever you were, and what an incredible contribution to our local community. I think the strangest thing that was found, and it is rather relevant to Strathcona because I think it's your symbol, but out on Thane Road, Ripley's found a swan's head. Yep. Where I come from, it's at least a $10,000 fine, and it's high treason, because the Queen owns all the swans. But there was a phenomenal spirit out there, and I'm hugely grateful. And it was just one of those days, at the end of the day, when I walked home, and I thought, that has struck me to the heart. And it's one of those days where you just feel that great pride as a member of the community, and for me as a headmaster, walking home, as to how every single student and staff member responded to that challenge, both individually and collectively. I do want to say, and I'm going to carry on talking about swans, that they have that great skill of gliding over the surface, whether it's on a river or lake, but paddling hard underneath. And I think that is a very good metaphor for the Strathcona experience this year. And it has been